Welcome in to another episode of the PFF NFL show. Max Chadwick alongside Dalton Wasserman here. Dalton, we previewed every single Power 4 college football team, all 68 of them. You and I thought we were done with team previews this offseason. We're not done just yet. We are previewing every single NFL team heading into the 2025 season, starting off with the AFC North, a division that's always wide open every single year. We're going to break down every single team in depth today.
It's wide open, it's competitive, and right now, a month away from the season, there's no shortage of storylines, right? The Ravens are trying to win a Super Bowl. The Steelers have Aaron Rodgers and a brand new offense, right, with him and DK Metcalf. The Bengals have all their controversies in contract situations with Trey Hendrickson. They're trying to fix the defense and fill the holes on their team. And then, of course, there's the Browns quarterback competition. So there's no shortage of stories in the AFC North. It's going to be another fun year.
Of course, we're only weeks away from the NFL season. I want to remind you guys, there is a PFF Plus sale going on right now. $40 off, 33% off. PFF Plus is right now to help you win all your fantasy leagues, help you win all your bets this season too, and make you the smartest fan in your group chat. So go to subscribe.pff.com and use code EARLYBIRD for now and only a few days left in this sale right now to get $40 off your PFF Plus annual subscription. Every single NFL team and every single FBS team subscribes to PFF, and you can too using code EARLYBIRD at subscribe.pff.com today. Again, the sale ends very, very soon. August 7th. It's August 4th right now. Only a few days left in this sale. Take advantage of it right now at subscribe.pff.com and use code EARLYBIRD to get that sale right now. All right, Dalton, let's start off with the reigning division champions, back-to-back division champions in the AFC North. That is the Baltimore Ravens. They went 12-5 last year. They lost in the divisional round last year too. And listen, this is a team, it just feels like they're right on the cusp of grabbing that Lombardi trophy, the first one for Lamar Jackson. This is a team that's loaded offensively and defensively, Dalton, but honestly, their biggest strength of this entire team, I would probably say, is their ground game between Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry.
Absolutely. When you look at the efficiency that they run with now on the ground, and I know Lamar Jackson's gotten so much better as a passer in the last 2 years under Todd Monken, but you look at this team and their rushing attack, there's so often where it's just unstoppable. They went 11-0 last season when Derrick Henry ran for at least 90 yards. It's maybe the greatest read option tandem we've ever seen in the NFL. You've got a two-time MVP quarterback who also balances things out with his arm, and we've got Derrick Henry, who last year you could argue had his most efficient season, 6 yards per carry, highest rushing grade of his career, led the NFL in missed tackles forced. I mean, everything you could ask for in a ground game out of your backfield, you get it out of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. And the entire rest of the team and the pace of Ravens games is really determined by how much they dominate on the ground. The first hope, really, it's kind of that classic thing of you can't stop them, you can only hope to contain them. That's what you have to do. You just can't let this team run for 250, 300 yards on you, or the game is over before it starts. But the fact that they have these two guys to start their offense, to be the engine of their offense in the backfield, really seems like it's unfair a lot of days.
Absolutely. Baltimore had a 94.5 team rushing grade last year. Not only was that the best of any team in the NFL last year, that was the best of any team in PFF history, dating all the way back to the 2006 NFL season, over 18 seasons worth of data. Baltimore had the best team rushing grade we've ever given out over a single season. I want to remind you guys that they had an A in our 2025 NFL draft grade and a B- in free agency grade too. So a team that was already very good, had a great offseason this year too. The one question mark I would say for Baltimore right now is their edge rushers. I think it's a decent unit overall, but they're kind of waiting for some youngsters to step up and become a star on that defense. None of their players on their edge unit had a pass rush grade above a 74.7. So none of them had a 75 pass rush grade last year. And as a unit, they're outside the top 20 in pressure rate and outside the top 20 in pass rush win rate. Odafe Owe could take another step in his development, or you really relying maybe a second-round rookie in Mike Green. A lot of people thought could have been a first-round pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. maybe he can help out a lot in that department too and become a star like a lot of people thought he could be coming out of Marshall. But as of right now, that's the one position Baltimore has right now where I don't really see a true difference maker or a true star on their team.
Yeah, no, it was either that or their pair of guards on offense are just mediocre right now, and they're going to be playing a new left guard with Patrick McCarry leaving in free agency. But yeah, they're edge defenders. And look, it's kind of hard to find a lot of weaknesses with this Ravens team because they don't really have that Achilles heel. Even when we talk about their edge defenders, they're just solid instead of great, right? They just don't have that Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons type of presence.
TJ Watt even, like
TJ Watt off the edge, right? You say they just don't have one of those guys, even like the other three teams in their division have, assuming the Bengals can extend Trey Hendrickson and get that situation resolved. But the Ravens, that's really one of the big things and why you project them to be so high with their win total, the favorites to win this division, possibly one of the favorites to go to the Super Bowl, is they don't really have that one big thing that you go, okay, just stick your thumb in it and you can beat them, right? Even when we talk about the edge rushers, it's still a solid group as opposed to an elite one. So I think that's part of the beauty of this Ravens team is there's just not one huge weakness.
Yeah. A solid group of edge rushers, not a solid quarterback. One of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, two-time MVP Lamar Jackson. What makes him so special, Dalton?
I mean, at this point, everything. What we've seen in his development as a passer over the last 2 years with Todd Monken as his offensive coordinator, the ability to win now in the drop-back game, because he used to be very play-action dependent, right? And he was figuring everything out. He wasn't the most polished passer coming out of Louisville. Now, you look at Lamar Jackson, and there's really no weakness in his game. The only thing people are going to point to is, well, he hasn't gotten to a Super Bowl. He hasn't won a ring yet. But that really, look, even in the playoff game against Buffalo, wasn't great in the first half, but he drove his team down to tie the game and made the throw to tie the game, and Mark Andrews dropped it. So you look at Lamar Jackson all the way around, one of the most dynamic runners we've ever seen. Now he's become an elite passer, the first quarterback in PFF history to have a 90 passing grade and a 90 rushing grade in the same season last year. So certainly, obviously, Josh Allen won the MVP, but Lamar had a great argument, and you just see his development as a passer, and John Harbaugh's even said this recently. He believes he's one of the all-time great passers now, and it feels like over the last couple of years, he's become that. If he continues the dual threat momentum that he's got, the Ravens should be one of the inner circle contenders to win a Super Bowl, but it's just everything. Best big-time throw rate of his career, best turnover-worthy play rate of his career. He continues to get into his prime and get better and better, even though he's already a two-time MVP. It's just unbelievable, his development with his arm and then what he still brings with his feet to the ground game.
And he won 2 MVPs, but it felt like 2024 was his best season we've ever seen from Lamar Jackson.
You could argue it. I mean, I make the argument that Allen probably should have won it in 23, and then Lamar should have won it last year. But, I mean, you know how these voting things go sometimes. But there's no question. I mean, unquestionably one of the 4 best quarterbacks. And I'm sure the people of Baltimore feel like he's the best quarterback in the NFL.
I believe we had him QB3 in our offseason rankings. Yeah, QB3 for that. 94.9 PFF grade last year, career high. Also led all quarterbacks in the NFL. 93.3 passing grade last year, also led all quarterbacks in the NFL. Just such a cool development to see Lamar Jackson become one of the elite drop-back passers in the NFL. Because we knew, coming out of Louisville, we knew this guy was a special generational runner at quarterback. But there were a lot of people saying, oh, he's got to play wide receiver. He's got to play running back. He plays quarterback. Now he's one of the best passers in the NFL. Just such a cool development to see him become just a guy who could win from the pocket, too. That's the guy who's going to make you miss and make plays downfield. He is just an incredible passer now, and now it's obvious why he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And another guy, Dalton, who's really helping out in that backfield is Derrick Henry, who joined the Ravens last year, coming over from the Titans after a legendary career in Tennessee, and he had his best year ever in 2024, when usually when running backs hit 30 years old, the wheels start to come off a little bit. Derrick Henry, the wheels are coming on for him right now. He led the NFL with a 93.5 rushing grade and 89 broken tackles last year. Henry averaged 6 yards per carry, the most in the NFL last year. And Dolan, how about this? In all 11 games where he had at least 90 yards on the ground, the Ravens won. So he is a guy that you just need to feed him the football. It's incredible what he's doing right now. A future Hall of Fame running back Derrick Henry is. I believe he's led the NFL in yards after contact in 4 of the last 5 seasons, I believe. He is just an incredible presence. And in Tennessee, he was the guy the defenses had to key in on, right? So now in Baltimore, you got a 2-time MVP in Lamar Jackson, who also defenses need to keep an eye on when he's running the football too. And also he's one of the best passers in the NFL. Now Derrick Henry, the boxes can't be that heavy against Derrick Henry. You're seeing him just dominate right now.
Absolutely. He's got why he had his most efficient season last year is because now he's got the extra space that Lamar Jackson as the option threat affords him. When you have a guy that you just don't have to account for up front, and even if he gets free, he still has to tackle Derrick Henry. It's honestly just unfair. The nightmare that we thought this backfield could be when they signed Derrick Henry last year, it became that and so much more. There are days when this team is simply unstoppable just because of those two guys in the backfield. Can I throw one more Lamar Jackson stat at you real quick? So the Ravens, because they have Jackson and they have such a high floor as a team and they're always in games, right? They don't lose games by 2 scores very often. They have not lost a game by two scores or more with Lamar Jackson starting at quarterback since week 10 of 2021.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a couple of games they lost where he didn't play, but the last time Lamar Jackson lost a game by at least 2 scores was week 10 of 2021.
That's
just
insane.
Beyond ridiculous. The level, the floor that he gives you as the elite quarterback that he is, and then the rest of the team obviously is very good. It's just insane. When you're in, even when you lose, when you're right down to the wire in every single game, that's just ridiculous.
So we broke down already a superstar quarterback in Lamar Jackson, a superstar running back in Derrick Henry, and Dalton, the Ravens also have the best safety in the NFL in Kyle Hamilton.
Absolutely. I mean, Kyle Hamilton, you could argue the best safety in the NFL, arguably the most versatile safety in the NFL. He was the second highest graded safety in football behind Kirby Joseph last year, his first 90 PFF grade of his career just 3 years into it. And you look at the impact that he has all over the field. We've seen him have years where he played primarily in the slot, and he's excellent there. He's big enough to be the extra linebacker in run fits. He's fast enough to play free safety. And I think that's the thing that impressed me the most last year is when this Ravens team turned around, especially in their second half of the regular season. They were arguably the best coverage team in football. And it was actually because they simplified Hamilton's role and just said, look, we need you to just be the free safety, be the center fielder back there. We're going to simplify the coverages. We're going to go a lot of cover 3, a lot of single high defenses. And the fact that he's an elite center fielder, he's an elite player in the slot. He's one of the best slot players we have. He can, again, play in run defense. He can rush the passer. He's just one of the few players in football that can do everything. We've seen only a handful of those guys even throughout the history of PFF over the last decade. Eric Weddle, Derwin James, Kyle Hamilton, Brian Branch is a little bit of that for Detroit. But Hamilton, the size, the speed, the power when it comes to tackling, just everything that he has, he's the glue that holds the entire Ravens back 7 together. And what he allows them to do, especially in those single high defenses as the free safety back there, you just can't take shots on this team because number 14 is always looming.
He's a versatile chess piece, honestly. And we mentioned before the Ravens have a little bit of a question mark at edge defender, not a question mark at safety. They might have the best safety duo in the NFL very, very soon because Kyle Hamilton, in my opinion, in our PFF's opinion, really is the number 1 safety in the league. Also, the Ravens drafted Malachi Starks, who's our rookie to watch right now for the Baltimore Ravens. He will take on a much bigger role than expected this year because Darius Washington is probably going to be out for the entire season with a torn Achilles. Starks, though, was outstanding. He is ready for the moment right now. 87.5 PFF grade across his 3 years at Georgia on nearly 2,500 snaps, too. A lot like Kyle Hamilton, Dolan. He could play in the slot. He could play free safety. He could play in the box. And now you have 2 safeties who are just versatile chess pieces in that defense. I cannot wait to watch Malachi Starks in that secondary, in our opinion, the best secondary in the NFL going into next year. And like I said, you have Kyle Hamilton, who's a very young player, who's drafted in 2022. Now you have Malachi Starks, who's just drafted in 2025. Hamilton's already a superstar. We think Starks will be one of the best safeties in the NFL, too. This will soon be, in my opinion, the best safety duo in the NFL.
And Starks is so comfortable in all of those roles, like you mentioned, and he's probably going to play a similar role to what Darius Washington did last year. It was a lot in the slot. It was a lot down towards the box with Hamilton as the free safety. And look, there's going to be times where that flips and they want Hamilton down low too. But Starks is just, if he feels like such a safe player, right? We watched him the last couple of years at Georgia. He's a great tackler. He can play man-to-man on slot receivers if you want him to. There's even some people who thought, you know what, if this guy wanted to be a corner, maybe he could be. But so talented, and what he adds to this defense is just going to be really immeasurable. When you talk about him and then the addition of Jair Alexander on the outside, this does have a chance to be the best secondary in football as long as the starting 5 stay healthy.
Absolutely. So before we move on to the bottom line for the Ravens right now, we want to help you guys out, put some money, put some cheddar in your pockets right now too. Ben Lindsay, who is a guru in terms of winning bets, he is constantly nailing all these parlays, all these outlandish bets. He actually put together the best bet for every single team season long next year. We're going to break down his bets right now. And remind you guys, too, a lot of our betting insights, again, available at the PFF Plus subscription at subscribe.pff.com. So for the Ravens, his best bet of the year is Zay Flowers over 900.5 receiving yards, which is minus 110 right now on DraftKings Sportsbook. His reasoning for that, Flowers cleared 1,000 yards last season, and he's once again the top target for Lamar Jackson in a Ravens offense that passed a lot more in neutral situations than they have in the last 2 years under Todd Monken. So I like this bet a lot too, Dalton. As probably the number one guy. I know they brought in DeAndre Hopkins too, but Zay Flowers is still that number one receiver in that offense. As the number one guy who had over 1,000 yards last year, I think over 900.5 receiving yards at minus 110 odds right now, that's a really good bet.
No, I think it absolutely is. He had over 1,000 last year, and I think the bigger thing for me is he's led the team easily in targets over the last 2 years. 216 regular season targets over the last 2 years, 112 last year. I mean, you talk about, they brought in DeAndre Hopkins. Obviously, they have Rashad Bateman. They have the great tight ends, but he's the most versatile player in their offense. And when you think about how he can attack all the levels of a defense, right? He's got the speed to threaten deep downfield. He's a good intermediate route runner. He's going to get all the touches when it comes to the screen game, right, on the outside. So, and a lot of those RPO looks. So, Flowers, I mean, as long as he plays 17 games, there really isn't any reason he shouldn't clear 900 yards. I think that's a great bet.
Absolutely. All right, so Baltimore's win total is set at, I believe, 11.5 right now, or 10.5. I got to see the line right now. But what is the bottom line for Baltimore? We have them projected to win 11 games this year. What is a successful season for the Ravens this year?
Well, and when we have these projected win totals in the PFF system, that's really a median total, right? So when you talk about a median total being 11 for this team, that's what we're expecting them to win, and anything beyond that is just playing a little bit above their capability. The fact is with the Ravens is that if you're taking pretty much any list of, okay, here are the top 5 most likely teams to win a Super Bowl, the Ravens pretty much have to be in it. They've been right on the cusp every year. They've come up a little bit short in big playoff moments, even in close games. We saw it again last year in Buffalo with the drops and just having a rough first half against the Bills. But I think the expectation for this team is you're an inner circle Super Bowl contender. We expect you to win a Super Bowl with this quarterback, with this running back, with the defense the way it improved down the stretch last season. I just think that's the expectation. I mean, there's so few teams in the league that are allowed to be Super Bowl or bust, especially on a yearly basis. But I think we're going to talk about all 3 of the big teams in the AFC. Eventually, the Chiefs, Bills, and Ravens, they all have the same set of expectations, and that's to win a Super Bowl. The Ravens season will be defined in moments, especially in the postseason.
It just feels like they're one of the most balanced teams in the NFL. They had the best offense last year in terms of PFF grade and EPA per play. 6th best defense in PFF grade, 7th best in EPA per play last year, too. This is a balanced team all the way around, and you're right, they got to come up big in big moments in playoffs. It's really just holding them back right now. They have not made the Super Bowl since they won it in 2012 with Joe Flacco. So I think I'm going to spoil it right now. I think I'm picking the Ravens to win the Super Bowl this year. I'm all in on this team right now. I think they did a great job this offseason too, and they were already an amazing team last year. It just feels like one of these years they're going to get over the hump. I'm banking on it being this year too. But, yeah, I think this is at least a top 4 or 5 team in the NFL, and like you said, in the inner circle for Super Bowl contenders right now.
To me, when we talk about the other 3 elite quarterbacks aside from Patrick Mahomes, and the feeling with all of them is, well, one of these years, right? One of these years. But the Ravens team feels like the best equipped to do that, right? Obviously, the Bengals have issues on the O-line and on defense. The Bills have their issues, and they have a lot of young pieces on defense. The Ravens defense and the rest of their team, they're ready for it. They just have to do it in those big moments. They're absolutely ready to win a championship. It's just about getting over that hump and getting through the AFC gauntlet when you have to play Allen, when you have to play Mahomes and anybody else that's coming behind him in the AFC too, because it's still a loaded conference.
Absolutely. So, Baltimore Ravens, back-to-back AFC North champions, have a great shot at winning the AFC North once again in 2025. Next up in our AFC North preview is the Cincinnati Bengals, who for the second straight year last year, Dawn, missed the playoffs and had a 9-8 record. 9-8 in back-to-back years, missing the playoffs in back-to-back years to no fault of their offense last year. The 10th most efficient offense in EPA per play. The defense, though, they let them down time and time again last year. See right there, at 22nd in defensive grade last year. The Bengals did a solid job this offseason. We gave them a C for their draft and a B+ for free agency. They locked down Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, what they needed to do. Hopefully, it sounds like they will lock down Trey Hendrickson soon on this team right now. It sounds like at least Shamar Stewart finally signed too. They have a great quarterback in Joe Burrow and great receivers, obviously. But some other questions around the team they'll break down in just a second. But, Dalton, what is the biggest strength of the Cincinnati Bengals team?
I mean, it's three guys that you just mentioned. It's Joe Burrow, it's Jamar Chase, it's T. Higgins. There is no question how the Bengals are going to attack it. It is through the air, and when all three of these guys were healthy and on the field last year, T. Higgins was dealing with some injuries. They went 8-4. Okay, so they can beat any team on any given day, even the best teams in football, just because they have these three guys. Joe Burrow was the second highest graded passer in the NFL last season behind Lamar Jackson. Jamar Chase won the Triple Crown, leading the league in yards, touchdowns, and catches. And T. Higgins was in the top 10 of receiving grade himself. He wins so many of those one-on-one matchups on the outside. That's just what you're dealing with, is that these are the headliners. These are the heavy hitters for the Cincinnati Bengals. Even for all of their other flaws, when these three guys are firing on all cylinders, they can beat anybody. They have an elite quarterback. They have arguably the best pair of receivers in football. They can score with anybody. They just have to make a handful of stops per game to help them out.
Absolutely. Yeah, the question mark is still on the defense too, but also the one question mark you really have with that offensive line has not really been great in Cincinnati either. Cincinnati's offensive line has been in the bottom 5 of PFF grade as a unit in 4 of Burrow's 5 seasons at quarterback. In 2024, they were 29th in pass blocking grade and 29th in run blocking grade. One of the 5 worst offensive lines in the NFL in both pass blocking and run blocking last year. They didn't really add too many major additions to that unit either. They did bring in a couple rookies, but they're more of day 2 picks than anything else. So that's still a bit of a question mark next year. Dylan Fairchild might, start for that offensive line, probably will start for that offensive line this year. That's the one question mark I really have on this offense right now, is that offensive line has not been great in the last half decade, and it doesn't look that great right now either.
I mean, that great might be overselling it. I mean, they, again, like you mentioned, bottom 5 in 4 of Burrow's 5 seasons. In the one year they weren't, they were still only 20th, right? So there's only one year where they were outside of that bottom 5. But I think that's really the big thing holding them up, and it's not just protecting Burrow, because the spotlight has always been on protecting Joe Burrow. Obviously, the torn ACL is rookie year, the dismal performance against the Rams in the Super Bowl, but it's just continued down that path, and they're not great at running the football either. It's not a real creative run scheme, and it's not an offensive line that moves people. You mentioned 29th in run blocking grade also. That makes it difficult. It just puts more pressure on Burrow to process the field quicker, to carry this offense the way that it needs to be carried because of all the other flaws. But look, I think, you mentioned the defense. The defense has some level of talent, especially if Trey Hendrickson is going to sign and play, obviously, and Al Golden's going to try to fix that. But this offensive line, you really feel like it's a talent deficiency, right? I know there's certain things that they've tried to do and just haven't worked. Orlando Brown hasn't been great. Amarius Mims hasn't been great. It would be much better if those two could play better this year. But for now, you still project this as being a bottom 5 unit going into this year because they didn't have any major additions.
Yeah, you're really hoping Amarius Mims, after his rookie year, can improve in year 2. Take that year 2 jump and become a really good right tackle in the NFL. Because if he does, that will help out the offensive line a lot, but you're really kind of banking on that right now, too. And also banking on Dylan Fairchild coming in as a rookie, as a third-round pick, and being ready to start at left guard for this team. So an offensive line that's put a lot of pressure on Joe Burrow, but Dawn, he is handling that pressure beautifully. He was the most valuable quarterback player in the NFL last year, according to our wins above replacement metric. What makes him one of the 4 best quarterbacks in the NFL?
To me, it's the level of processing when he's reading defenses, and it just feels like he sees things before they happen. He knows when to attack one-on-one matchups. He knows when to attack certain windows in zone coverage. He knows when to take off and run for first downs. I think when you look at Joe Burrow and the way that he deals with all that pressure that he has to handle, and he's had to handle his entire career. Look, with this offensive line, his career could have very much gone the way so far that, say, Andrew Luck's went in Indianapolis. Obviously, he had the ACL in year 1, but we're lucky that Joe Burrow hasn't suffered another major injury. But that's because he handles that pressure the way that the old school quarterbacks did. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, all those guys, they read defenses and they get rid of the ball quickly and accurately through it, right? Last year, the highest graded passer in the NFL on throws under 2.5 seconds, by far the highest graded passer in the NFL on throws goes under 2 seconds. He gets rid of the ball lightning quick. He sees defenses pre-snaps and trusts his instincts and trusts that he can make accurate throws, especially to Higgins and Chase. So I think when you look at Burrow, and it's not as flashy sometimes as Josh Allen taking off running or Lamar Jackson or Jaden Daniels taking off running, right? But he beats defenses and blitzes the old school way. He throws right over the top of them, and he's right much more often than not. That level of processing is really what makes Burrow special.
This might sound weird, but if you told me, hey, your team's going to have a bottom 5 offensive line in football, what quarterback do you want behind it? He's the first one I'll take.
I think you could very much argue that. Obviously, you could argue Mahomes, but even then, we've seen Mahomes in the 2 Super Bowls, and at times when pressure has gotten to him, that he will try to improvise and play hero ball a little bit. Joe Burrow is not going to do that. Not to say he doesn't have functional mobility and he can't work outside the pocket, but he just, to me, he does it in the way that Peyton Manning and Tom Brady used to beat the pressure. It's just right over the top of it, find the hole over the blitz where you need to, deal with that pressure, and honestly, if the only decent play, I should say, if the only thing to prevent the worst negative is to take a sack, then take a sack, because he's gotten even better. Still last year, career best 1.9% turnover-worthy play rate. He just does not make negative plays, and that's why he leads the league in PFF WAR since he's been drafted, is because there's just so few negatives. And I know, last year there are moments where he could absolutely press and try to throw balls into tight windows that he shouldn't, because he has to score 35 a game for them to win, but he just refuses to give the football away even when under pressure. So I mean, again, I think it's a great point you just made, because he's definitely, I think between him and Mahomes, those are probably the 2 guys in that argument of, okay, they're going to get rid of the football to the right spot when the pressure's on.
Yeah, I just feel like he's the quarterback that can handle that kind of offensive line better than anyone else in the NFL right now. It's worth mentioning the Bengals do have a new offensive line coach in Scott Peters, so maybe that'll help out that offensive line this year, but they're really needed a lot of significant improvement from that offensive line. They don't need improvement from Jamar Chase. If he does improve, it's unbelievable, because he's already one of the best players in the NFL. Jamar Chase led the NFL in receiving yards, in catches, and receiving touchdowns last year. He won the Triple Crown last year. Only the 5th player since the merger to do so, to lead the league in catches, yards, and touchdown. Explosive player. He's been remarkably consistent throughout his career. Chase has had a receiving grade between basically an 85 and an 87 his entire career so far. And the Bengals really rely on him, right? They really need Jamar Chase to be that kind of guy, along with T. Higgins too. And Jamar Chase, ever since his LSU days, catching passes from Joe Burrow, now in the NFL catching passes from Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase has really lived up to the hype that he had coming out of LSU, and he's one of easily the 3, at least, I would say the 2, best receivers in football right now.
And with each season that passes with Chase, and he's so talented. I mean, when he's got the ball in his hands, he looks like a running back. He's got the blazing speed to win deep. He can win after the catch. I think what you like about the Bengals offense and what Zach Taylor's done with him, he's really become the queen on the chessboard, right? Where you can just put him in any position and move him in any direction, and he can make an explosive play from anywhere. It really does not matter what route he's running, what depth he's running. If it's a screen, you can put him in the backfield and have different alignments with him. You can put him in motion. He's really the guy that the entire defense has to tilt toward, right? And then it opens things up for everything else, for T. Higgins, for Mike Gesicki, for Chase Brown, for everybody else, because you just, at this point now, it's not just like an X receiver like T. Higgins that just lines up in one spot and dominates you. He's everywhere. He can be anywhere on any given play, and that's what makes him such a matchup nightmare, is that he can win from anywhere.
Absolutely. So, Dawn, the defensive player spotlight is a guy that's still holding out for a new contract right now, but we're banking on, hopefully, the Bengals locking this guy up long-term. Tell me more about Trey Hendrickson.
Well, you knew when we lined this up that I was going to have to be the one to talk about FAU legend Trey Hendrickson, right? But no, I mean, simply put, he was very good early in his career with the Saints in a part-time role, and ever since he's gotten to the Bengals in 2021, he's been one of the elite pass rushers in the NFL, fourth in the NFL in pressure rate since he joined the Bengals, 5th in pass rush grade, 8th in pass rush win rate. He is one of the elite pass rushers in the NFL. He led the league in sacks last year, and somehow, look how valuable he is to this team. He led the league in sacks and was one of the best pass rushers in the league again, and yet the Bengals were still 26 as a team in pass rush grade. So basically, without Trey Hendrickson, their pass rush is non-existent, especially if they're not blitzing. Now we're expecting Al Golden to get a little more aggressive with this defense and blitz a little more, run a little more man coverage on the back end, but pretty much his defense last year was Trey Hendrickson, and that was it, right? I mean, he's just the pass rush arsenal, the get off the edge, over that blind side for the quarterbacks. I mean, it's just he's just developed into, even for as much as I hype up the FAU legends, I never thought it would get to a level where Hendrickson was leading the league in sacks and arguing over whether he was getting a $35 or $40 million contract.
Yeah.
He's just a ridiculously good football player, and it's somebody really, last year their defense wouldn't have even functioned at all without him, and we still have to kind of question if they could do that this year, because this has been 6 months of this.
Yeah.
Right? When is this going to end? Just sign your best player, because you won't function very well up front without him.
Absolutely. He's at training camp right now. He's not practicing. He's not suiting up, but he's at least at training camp. So he's there. He's just not practicing until he gets signed just yet. I think it'll get done soon. Hopefully, for the Bengals' sake, it gets done soon. But he is at least in the building for Cincinnati. A guy who could really help out on a defensive line is the rookie to watch. That is, again, another guy, Dalton, another edge rusher in Cincinnati, who had a long holdout. That was Shamar Stewart, but Shamar Stewart is signed now. He is practicing with the team right now. He was the Bengals' first-round pick this year. He is a freak athlete, man. He had one of the best combines we've ever seen from an edge rusher prospect at that combine. He is a really good run defender, 88.2 run defense grade last year. That was 6th among all edge rushers in college football last year. Still developing as a pass rusher. I know the 1.5 sack stat is the one that everyone keeps going back to. He is a freak athlete, obviously. He's still very raw as a pass rusher, too. And the one thing I'll say to kind of give Shamar Stewart some credit there, that A&M defense was not designed for edge rushers to pin their ears back and just go after the quarterback. They were very much focused on the run first and then going after the quarterback when they saw that it wasn't a run play. So he wasn't necessarily just going all out to get the quarterback. He was kind of holding the point of attack first, seeing if they're running the football. If not, then he's going after the quarterback. So he is still raw as a pass rusher. I'm not denying that. But I think the numbers as a pass rusher were kind of hampered by the fact that Texas A&M's defensive scheme didn't really allow him to go after the quarterback that much.
Kind of a theme that we saw with several defensive linemen,
Yep.
not just him, right? You think about Stewart, you think about Arizona Cardinals first-round pick Walter Nolan and the year he had at Ole Miss. You think about Nick Scoreton, now a
Yep.
Carolina Panther, and what he previously did at Purdue, right? So, I mean, you've got some guys down there at A&M who didn't quite rush the passer, at least didn't have the pass rush production that you might want to see. But look, Stewart, he's big, he's twitchy, he's strong, he's a very, very good run defender, and I think that's a key to this too, right?
Yes.
We can't forget. Everyone talks about the pass rush. Well, you have Trey Hendrickson as one elite pass rusher already, but you also need to fix this run defense. And Stewart setting the edge can make a lot of plays in run defense as well. Like you mentioned, the 6th best run defense grade in college football last year. So I think, look, now that he's on the field, add a little more polish to him. Al Golden's going to be in a lot of those 4-man fronts. I think Stewart playing in a little wider alignment more often is going to help him set the edge there. And having him and Hendrickson, assuming Hendrickson can get on the field as well, that's going to be a big asset for them. I think Stewart, we shouldn't expect 10, 12, 15 sacks maybe early on in his career, but that help that he gives them in early downs on run defense, right, and getting in that rotation and really putting opposing offenses in bad situations so Trey he can then tee off on 3rd down. That's really what you want out of Shamar Stewart, I think, early on.
In a division where you're facing Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, and you're facing the Steelers now Caleb Johnson, they can run the ball a lot. Arthur Smith still calling plays there too. The Browns, with who knows playing quarterback with their running backs now, too. This is a division where they want to run the football in the cold weather, too. A guy like Shamar Stewart could be very valuable as a run defender.
And not just in that division. You look at most of the teams that made the playoffs last year. They were in the top 12 or 13 of run rate, right? When you talk about the Bills run the football a lot. Kansas City, they run the football between the tackles a good amount because they weren't that explosive downfield last year. You've got other teams like Denver and the Chargers trying to get better at running the football for good reason. Everyone's following the Eagles' blueprint now. They ran the football more than anybody. They won a Super Bowl. So everyone's trying to add balance to their offense, and stopping the run is going to be just as in vogue as getting it done on the ground on offense.
And the Bengals last year were 18th in run defense grade last year. So they were below average in run defense grade, and Shamar Stewart could really, really help out in that department. Because Trey Anderson, amazing pass rusher, he's more of a solid run defender than anything else. If Shamar Stewart could be a star run defender while he develops as a pass rusher for Cincinnati, that's very, very valuable for a defensive line that really needs all the help they can get right now. Before we move on to the bottom line, Dalton, the Bengals' best bet of the year. And, Dalton, I cannot believe this is even a bet available right now. For minus 115 odds, you can get Jamar Chase to lead the AFC North, not the NFL, lead the AFC North in receiving touchdowns at minus 115. That's the bet of the year. in my opinion. Jamar Chase is pretty clearly the top receiver in that division right now. He shared at least a tie of the AFC North lead in receiving touchdowns each of his first 4 seasons. It's one of the pass-heaviest teams in the NFL with obviously Joe Burrow and T. Higgins and all those guys, and obviously Jamar Chase too. He is clearly the number 1 receiver on that team right now. And you have a division where there's not other like superstar pass catchers, like maybe a DK Metcalf, maybe a Zay Flowers, maybe one of the tight ends in Baltimore too, like Mark Andrews could do that too. But man, Jamar Chase at -115 to lead the division in receiving touchdowns feels like a steal in my opinion.
It feels like a steal as long as obviously he's healthy and playing maybe not even all 17 games. Because you look at last year, he had 17 touchdowns in the regular season. The next closest player in the division was Mark Andrews with 11, and then T. Higgins with 10. So it just shows you, obviously, how much the Bengals are reliant on the passing game. And Jamar Chase, I believe he led the NFL with 171 targets. He did. He led the NFL with 171 targets last year. So asking him to just lead the division in passing touchdowns when you've got the Browns and their quarterback situation, the Steelers, who want to have balance and aren't going to have maybe the most dynamic passing attack unless DK Metcalf is the next biggest threat to lead the division in touchdowns, and then the Ravens, who on their good days, Lamar Jackson is not throwing the ball 40, 45, 50 times. They have balance. They're running the ball, and he's throwing it closer to 30 times. I think Jamar Chase has to be the prohibitive favorite to lead the division in touchdowns, especially when you consider, again, last year it's 6 more than anybody else.
Absolutely. All right, Dalton, bottom line time now for Cincinnati. They have missed the playoffs in back-to-back years with 9-8 records. Their win total is essentially set at 9.5 right now on most sports books. And our win total for them is set at around 9.2 wins, I believe, too. Is this a team that will, 9.4 I should say, is this a team that will bounce back and make the playoffs? Will Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins carry this team to the playoffs? Or are they in a really tough division? Are they in for another pretty difficult year?
They certainly can. I mean, if you get Burrow, Chase, Higgins, and Hendrickson for all 17 games, you can win any week, especially the 3 on offense. You can just outscore anybody anyway. And the number of games this team lost by 1 score, or they blew a lead in the 4th quarter, or they just couldn't get a stop when they needed to, you would think almost that there's some positive regression that's going to happen for this team. The problem is that the same questions we always have with the Bengals, they haven't been answered this offseason, right? Their offensive line still projects as a bottom 5 unit. Their defense is what they're really hoping for more so than, there's an infusion of a couple rookies, Shamar Stewart, Demetrius Knight, and obviously the cornerback room is going to be a little bit healthier, but it's really more about what Al Golden can do with this defense and the adjustments that he can make, as opposed to what Lou Anarumo was doing last year. So I think the Bengals, look, when you have Burrow, Chase, and Higgins, you should make the playoffs. My bigger problem with them is with all of those issues and all the questions that we're still asking about them, especially in the trenches, it feels like there's a hard cap on this team unless Burrow goes on a miracle run in the playoffs of they're just not quite as good. They're not as well-rounded as the elite teams in the AFC. Maybe they are the 4th best team just because they have Joe Burrow, but it feels like it would be so hard for me to pick them to go to or to win a Super Bowl with the flaws that they still have, because they haven't added anything that makes you go, oh wow, okay, this is the guy that puts them over the top, right? Even the Steelers getting obviously say a Jalen Ramsey on defense, or the Ravens with Starks, and some of these other teams that make big additions every year. And the Bengals this feels like the same team as last year with a few rookies thrown in. I think obviously they can make the playoffs. If you have Joe Burrow, you've always got a shot. And in any given game, you get into the playoffs and it's 1 game at a time and you give Joe Burrow a chance to win. But this team they still have their share of flaws, and I think that keeps them from being a championship contender.
Yeah, they're -144 on FanDuel to make the playoffs right now. I'll be optimistic and say they will make the playoffs. I think they'll get enough improvement from that defense to sneak in. They barely missed it out last year.
Yeah.
Like, they looked pretty bad last year, and then they went on a run at the end of the year to just missed out. They literally, last week of the season, they missed out on missing the playoffs. So I think Burrow is going to still be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Chase will still be one of the best receivers in the NFL. T. Higgins will still be a top 15 receiver in the NFL. Get Trey Anderson back. Hopefully get something for Shamar Stewart. Hopefully the offensive line improves a little bit too. I think for a team that just missed out last year, I don't think it'll happen again. I think the Bengals will sneak into the playoffs this year.
The 12 games that T. Higgins played last year, because he missed a handful, they were 8-4. I mean, that's just how good Burrow, Chase, and Higgins are, that they can carry this team to 8-4, and eventually that turns into 11-7 or so in there. So I mean, you're just talking about the problem is the things that are right with this team between Hendrickson and his contract situation and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase staying healthy and Burrow being protected. It feels like there's so much that has to go right for them from what's already going right on the good side. Any injury at all to any of those three guys, and it completely sinks them because they only really have one way right now they can win football games.
They started off 4-8 last year. They ended 9-8.
Right.
They won their last 5 games of the year, so they caught fire at the end of it.
And they won those last 5 because the defense in those 5 games was the 6th highest graded unit in the NFL. Right. If their defense does play up and they can and this is not a defense, I'm not asking them to be the number 1 defense in football. I'm asking them to give up 24 or less.
Yeah.
I'm asking them really to be average. This team with an average defense, now you talk about a Super Bowl contender. But they can't be bottom 10 on defense like they were last year. And, again, it's always going to be tough with a bottom 5 O-line.
So I'm saying yes to make the playoffs. Putting you on the spot right now. Will they make the playoffs next year?
The AFC is loaded. Man.
No fence.
We're not doing that. We're not doing
We're
not doing the prediction episode yet. I have to do that with Trevor at some point. I'll say yeah.
Okay.
I mean, because, again, them not making the playoffs, I think, then turns to bigger questions about the organization, right? They really need to make the playoffs. They still have Joe Burrow. As long as Burrow, Chase, and Higgins are all healthy, play all 17 games,
right?
I'll take it, yeah.
All right, that wraps up our Bengals preview. So I have 2 more teams left in this division. Before we get to those teams, though, we're going to talk about the sponsor of the show. That is Fabric by Gerber Life. What does success for your child look like to you? A job they're passionate about, traveling around the world, or just being happy and comfortable? Whatever their journey, you're going to make it easier to achieve with a kids investment account from Fabric Gerber Life. By making a contribution to your child's future today, you can help give them the means to pursue their dreams, big and small. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kids investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. It's all online. Manage your child's account and monitor their investments right from your phone. Unique gifting links can be shared with family and friends, so instead of more stuff, they can help grow your child's investments for their future instead. Start with just $20 with no contribution limits, tax advantages, and your funds are SIPC insured up to $500,000. Plus, no commission fees and just a low, flat monthly maintenance fee. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child today at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. MEET fabric.com/PFFNFL. Portfolios managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Learn more at meetfabric.com. Next up in our AFC North preview is the Cleveland Browns, who made the playoffs in the 2023 season with an 11-6 record. Came crashing back down, though, with a 3-14 record last year. Had the number 2 pick in the NFL draft. They traded back. They got Mason Graham out of it, too. Dalton, you can see right there. The defense was still really good. We'll break that down in just a second. The offense was the worst in the NFL last year in terms of offensive grade and EPA per play. For this offseason, we gave the Browns a C+ for their draft and a C+ for free agency. It's a really solid offseason all around for Cleveland. But Dawn, for a team that looked like it could struggle once again in 2025, but what is their one saving grace in this team right now?
Well, the one saving grace is that they gave Myles Garrett his $40 million a year, which having him alone makes you a darn near elite defensive line. He's the best defensive player in football.
He's the best player in football according to PFF 50.
Best player in football according to the PFF 50, which makes it even more astonishing that the Browns struggle as much as they do. But no, when you have Myles Garrett, when you now have top 5 pick Mason Graham on this defensive line, Isaiah McGuire's an emerging player, was a really good run defender last year. They added Malik Collins in free agency. I just think that's really, when you look at the Browns, what's the first problem when you're playing against them that you go to is, oh, this is a freakish defensive line led by a future Hall of Famer, right? And the 4-man rush that Jim Schwartz can throw at you, that's really the biggest problem, right? Any given matchup, they can surprise a team and win, because if you let this pass rush get going, you get in a tight game in the fourth quarter against them, Myles Garrett's going to work through even the double and triple teams. And I'm really excited to see especially Mason Graham this year. We're going to talk more about him, but I think he's going to have a whole lot of one-on-ones on the inside to work with. This D-line is what gives the Browns a chance to win games.
Yep.
That's the facts of it. They need to play elite defense. It starts up front with them with their 4-man rush.
They have, according to us, the the top 10 defensive line in the NFL. Myles Garrett's the best player in the NFL in our opinion, and Mason Graham is a top 5 pick. I thought he was. You said it last year. You thought Joe Alt was the safest pick in the draft. I think that applies to Mason Graham in that draft too.
And it's the two-dimensional factor with Graham, where it's run defense and as a pass rusher. He was clearly the best defensive tackle in college football the last 2 years. So adding him to this unit only makes him more fearsome.
Put him next to Myles Garrett, honestly. Get him some one-on-ones against guards or centers, and Mason Graham should have a great rookie year. Could contend, honestly, for Defensive Rookie of the Year if he has a lot of one-on-ones next year. Question mark is quarterback right now, because the Browns, I think for the first time I've ever seen, Dawn, in NFL history, have a 4-man battle for quarterback. You usually see 2 guys competing for the starting job. You never see 4 guys competing for the starting job right now. They have Joe Flacco, who's 40 years old, won comeback player of the year a couple years ago in Cleveland. You have Kenny Pickett, who flamed out in Pittsburgh, was the backup for the Eagles, after being a first-round pick for the Steelers. And now you have 2 rookies in Dylan Gabriel, who's your 3rd-round pick, and then a guy who you and I thought was a first-round caliber prospect in Shedeur Sanders, who was your 5th-round pick. Joe Flacco is most likely going to be the week 1 starter, but we could see all 4 of these guys this year. So, listen, the quarterback spotlight, talk about Joe Flacco because we think he's going to start week 1. But I want you to talk to me about all 4 of these guys and what they could potentially bring to this offense.
I mean, hold up now. You got 2. Don't forget 2 Super Bowl champions in Joe Flacco.
That's true.
Pickett also.
That's
but
true.
I mean, just the most lightning rod quarterback situation that we're going to have throughout this preseason. We're likely to see all 4 of these guys. Obviously, Flacco is familiar with the system, having brought the Browns to the playoffs 2 years ago. And we'll start with him. Look, 40 years old, played some decent football with the Colts again last year, but he hasn't had more than 300 dropbacks, I believe, since 2018 in a season. So when you're talking about that, you go, okay, are we really expecting Joe Flacco to start all 17 games? Probably not. He's 40 years old. He never moved much anyway, but especially now, and that shows when you look at a 35 passing grade under pressure last year that was the 6th worst in football. When he's back there and he's clean, he still has enough arm to make most of the throws on the field, right? He's always had a very good arm, and he still has it at 40 years old. It's just a matter of, can they protect him? Right? Kenny Pickett, obviously, like you mentioned, flamed out in Pittsburgh, didn't get a whole lot of action last year in Philadelphia, at times has, struggles to throw the ball down the field. Then you have Dylan Gabriel, who throughout, he was in college forever, always really good between the 20s, struggles with red zone work, played in some very college-ish offenses. And then you have, of course, the lightning rod of all of them, Shedeur Sanders, the son of Deion Sanders, had 2 great years at Colorado, very accurate. Trevor Sikkema comped him to, say, a Teddy Bridgewater. Doesn't have elite arm strength. We'll see if he can throw through the cold weather and all of that, but he is accurate. He sees the field like an NFL quarterback. It's just a matter of if he's going to get the opportunity. So you've got this weird 4-man race. We're going to see all these guys in the preseason. You're right. It's probably going to start with Flacco as the veteran and as the one guy who's familiar with Kevin Stefanski, but we have less clarity after all the Deshaun Watson situation. We have less clarity on the Browns quarterback situation than ever. And the problem for any of them is you go back and look at our unit rankings. We have their running back unit 29th, and that ranking was done assuming Quinshaw Judkins would be on the field, which he's the lone draft pick, not signed yet, and he's got some off-field issues. They have the last-ranked pass-catching core, their receivers and tight ends, and they have the 27th-ranked offensive line, and they had a lot of injury issues, and I believe DeJuan Jones already has an injury issue early in training camp. So you're looking at a set of quarterbacks that we have no clarity on, and not a particularly great supporting cast either. For as much as we like this defense, the offense is what holds them back, and the quarterback situation especially.
Yeah, I have a lot of question marks with that quarterback room right now. Are they going to carry all 4 in the season?
It would be. I would think if you're carrying all 4, unless one is hurt, you have to practice squad one of the quarterbacks, I believe, which I don't remember for a rookie if that exposes them to waivers or not. But I believe, I mean,
that'd be interesting.
The way roster construction is, because you can have a third emergency quarterback that doesn't count towards your game day 46, but I think a 4th one would have to be on the practice squad.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see what they do with that situation this year. But, I mean, listen, it's ironic. The one that you and I think, are most excited about was their 5th-round rookie, not the 3rd-round rookie or even the 2 veterans they have right now, too. It's just a wild situation.
Day 3 of the draft was a fun time, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that was certainly a fun one.
So we'll see. I think we're going to see all 4 of these guys in 2025, which, again, I've never seen a 4-man battle at quarterback in the NFL or even in college football before either. Offensive player spotlight, even though it's the last-ranked receiving core in the NFL, they still have a pretty good receiver leading it in Jerry Jeudy. He had 142 targets last year in that offense, the 7th most in the NFL, had a 74.9 receiving grade, which is the second best mark of his career too. And against his former team, the Denver Broncos, he went off against them. 235 yards in that Week 13 game against his former team in the Denver Broncos. And like you said, Dalton, they don't have a lot of proven pass catchers available to them right now. So Jerry Jeudy should once again get a lot of targets next year from whoever's playing quarterback for the Browns.
Yeah, he's the one wide receiver that we know will always be on the field, right? There's Deontay Johnson, there's Cedric Tillman, there's Jamari Thrash, there's a whole lot of unproven, not that Johnson's unproven on the field, but there's a lot of other stuff that goes into that. And then you have two solid tight ends, I think, in David Njoku and Harold Fannin Jr. I think could really make a nice 12 personnel package for him. But you look at Jeudy and the volume that he got last year, and you go, there's really no reason, no matter who the quarterback is, that Jeudy shouldn't be the top target again.
Definitely. But the top player, not only on the Cleveland Browns, but in the entire NFL, is on that defense and Myles Garrett.
I mean, think of it this way first. Imagine having a contract dispute with Myles Garrett and thinking, oh, maybe this guy isn't worth top dollar. I don't really understand that part of it, but they got it done. He's well worth every dollar of the $40 million. You know, I think it's a special look. It's his entire career. You know, he's not even 30 years old yet till December.
That's insane.
He could retire tomorrow and make the Hall of Fame. He's not even 30 years old yet until December. And you talk about especially the last 4 years, what he's done. 95.3 PFF grade is the best among all defensive players by 1.5 points. I mean, clearly the best defensive player in football, solid run defender, one of the great pass rushers we've ever seen, not even 30 years old yet, and he's got over 100 sacks for his career. He's not just one of the best players right now, and he showed that by leading the league in pass rush grade and pass rush win rate if you tune up the minimum to 200 pass rush reps, because Aiden Hutchinson was having an all-time great year also. But of the guys that really played the whole season, Garrett was still clearly the best pass rusher. This is just one of the greatest edge rushers of all time.
Yes.
That's not really in question, and he has a chance, if he keeps up the pace that he's been on for another, say, 4 or 5 years, to really maybe be a guy that challenges the all-time sack record when you get up near that 200 number. I mean, it is just absolutely ridiculous how good Myles Garrett is and how much he could single-handedly carry a defense some weeks. I mean, there are weeks where you go, wow, why did the Browns win this week? And you just go, number 95. He was just unblockable, and he's unblockable most weeks.
He has 102.5 sacks so far in his 8-year career. So another 7, I know it would be a lot to say he's going to be this good for another 7 years, but like he's already halfway there to the sack record.
If you get him on that pace for another 5, let's say, and who knows, maybe he's liable any year that he could have 18 to 20, but let's just say you're talking about 12 to 13 sacks a year. You do it for another 5, you're in that 170 range, and you start talking. And pass rushers, it seems like some of them are aging better than ever.
Yeah. It's pretty insane. He's got, He's got 60 sacks over the last 4 years so far. So he's averaging an incredible amount of sacks right now.
It's unbelievable.
So, yeah, he's the best player in the NFL in the PFF 50. A guy that we are a big fan of here, too, Mason Graham, is their rookie to watch this year. So, yes, the Browns did trade out from getting Travis Hunter at number 2 overall. And Dawn and I, when that happened on draft night, we were like, oh, I wouldn't give up Travis Hunter. But you got an extra first-round pick. And you got a guy in Mason Graham who is an excellent D tackle prospect, one of the best D tackle prospects we've had in recent memory. Mason Graham led all D tackles in the country last year in overall grade and run defense grade. Over his 3 years at Michigan, he was the highest graded defensive tackle in college football. Like I said before, great run defender, outstanding pass rusher too. I think he will be a top 10 defensive tackle in the NFL very, very soon. Could even be higher than that, honestly, too. Mason Graham, like I said, Dawn, it feels like a can't-miss prospect.
I absolutely agree. I thought he was arguably the safest pick in this entire draft class. And you look at even the way in pass rush situations that he can move around. You talk about creating one-on-one matchups because Myles Garrett demands 2 and 3 and 4 blockers in his direction. And the way Graham can move around almost in that Chris Jones type of fashion where you can put him out on the edge. We've seen him stand up at 320 pounds and rush the passer. You can stun him all over the place. He's a really good athlete. And to me, if there was a concern about, okay, he's got a little bit shorter arms, how can he handle double teams and take that on? I don't think he's going to see that many because you've got Myles Garrett. So if you want to double Mason Graham over Myles Garrett, if I'm the Browns, be my guest, because there's nobody one-on-one that can contain Garrett for an entire game like that.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned before, Myles Garrett, all those numbers right there. Now you have a guy and Mason Graham who could take up some double teams too. Like all of a sudden, Myles Garrett could be getting some one-on-ones too, and then his numbers can even go higher than that.
Yeah, I mean, you start talking about a stacked defensive line complementing each other, and even we got to talk about too the fact that he led the nation in run defense grade last year. It's a big factor in this also, because then it's also some teams try to neutralize a great pass rush by running the football a lot. Well, it's going to be hard to do that with Mason Graham in the backfield making plays.
Browns had the best run defense grade in the NFL last year, the third best pass rush grade, and now you add Mason Graham to that unit. This could be the best defensive line in football very soon.
Absolutely.
It could be. Yeah, I can't wait to watch Mason Graham as a rookie there in Cleveland. The best bet for the Browns this year, unfortunately, is not as optimistic as the other two that we just went over. The best bet is to be the last winless team in the NFL at plus 400, which you get right now on ESPN Bet. Really, Dawn, you look at that schedule, their season starts off home against Cincinnati, at Baltimore, Green Bay, at Detroit, Minnesota, at Pittsburgh, Miami, at New England. It could be a tough year for Cleveland. We think they're probably going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL once again. And with that brutal first half of the season, that it could be the last winless team remaining.
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to maybe do some schedule comping when it comes to maybe the Tennessee Titans, the New Orleans Saints, maybe the New York Giants. But, I mean, you talk about a team that, especially in all of those matchups, you're at a significant quarterback disadvantage every single week. That's the first thing you look at, obviously, is you go, okay, who are the two quarterbacks playing? And they're running out Flacco or Pickett or one of the rookies, right? So that's the first problem. And you just look in general at this offense and you go, where's it coming from? Where are the points coming from, right? They were already, among the lowest graded offenses last year, last in EPA per play, like you mentioned. So, and even where we thought they might have added some stability in the run game, we don't currently know what Quinshon Judkins' situation is either. So now, I mean, you still have Jerome Ford, you have Dylan Sampson, but Judkins was really supposed to be the face of that. So now the running game is called into question. We know Kevin Stefanski likes to run the ball. So I think that's the biggest thing about it is, especially in those first 6 games, and the quality of teams that they have to play. Maybe, look, they always give Cincinnati problems because of Cincinnati's pass protection and Myles Garrett and all of that. But even last year, I believe we saw the Bengals beat them in the second game. I think it was 17-3. I mean, Joe Burrow can find enough points, and the Browns always give the Bengals issues. But if they don't win week 1, you mentioned it, Ravens, Packers, Lions, Vikings, Steelers, how are they going to score, right? I mean, that's what you look at with the Browns any given week. You go, okay, how are they going to score even 20 points and win a game 20-17 or something like that? So I get it. I absolutely get the bet, especially at plus 400. That is a solid one because you just go, they're not favored in any of those games because of their offense.
Yeah, that first one, the Miami game, is the 7th game of the year. So, I mean, there's a very good chance they could start off 0-6 and even lose to Miami and New England. After that, you could start off 0-8, honestly. So I could see.
Even a team like New England and the way that we like their defense, how are they going to score in New England against that defense with all the pieces they've added?
Definitely.
That's a problem.
It's unfortunate for the Browns, but it could be another rough year in 2025 to try to figure out what to do on offense. So really, Dylan, the bottom line for this team, do you think it's going to be another brutal year for the Browns, or are they going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL once again?
I mean, it's just so hard to project them to win a lot of games with the offense, right? I mean, that's where, and it's great to have their defense, but even their defense, I have questions on because all of a sudden you had a struggling cornerback room last year, and Martin Emerson's now out for the year with a torn Achilles. Jordan Hicks, who I thought was their best linebacker last year, the veteran leader in their linebacker room, he just retired. So now you're looking at,
and Jeremiah Osakomoro is battling injuries
and he's
too.
not he's not going to play this year either. So you're now a lot thinner at line. Basically, your linebackers now are Devin Bush, who did have a good year last year, but that was the first time he's looked like that, and Carson Schlesinger. If I had Jordan Hicks in the middle there with them, then I'm looking at it a little bit differently. But with him retired and with Emerson out and the lack of depth at corner, I'm a little worried about the back seven, the entire back seven now, right? Because Schlesinger, he only started 1 year at UCLA, and he's very good. He's a very good athlete, but there's not a whole lot of experience there either. I would have liked him to get acclimated a little bit slower. So the D-line is great, but there's questions throughout the rest of this team, and it's hard not to project them to be pretty clearly in last place in this division.
Listen, Mason Graham is used to winning games in Ohio with just a D-line. He did it last year against Ohio State, which is literally the Michigan defensive line was the only reason why they won that football game. So maybe the Browns defensive line can do it this year too.
It's hard to win.
It's harder in the NFL,
hard to win 13-10 in the NFL every single week, right? I mean, you can do it once a year against Ohio State, maybe, but I mean, now you're talking about when you're talking about having to play Joe Burrow twice, Lamar Jackson twice, Aaron Rodgers twice, everybody else, Jared Goff, and everybody else we mentioned on that schedule. I mean, look, if you can find ways to win games 13-10 every week, cool, but it's harder and harder to do that.
Feels
in the
like
NFL
they're going to try to do that next year with that defensive line, but I don't know how feasible
and then we
is.
get into all of the Arch Manning conspiracy theories, right? Is that what we're is that the next step
talking
here?
about it? Yeah, they're talking about it. So we'll see what happens with them. But yeah, it does feel like the Browns will be in the quarterback sweepstakes next year for the 2026 NFL draft. I think their win total is set right around like 4.5 right now in most sports books. I think it's going to be another tough year for the Browns. We have them at 5.5 right now on PFF.com, so it could be a tough year. They'll probably be a little bit better than 3-14 like they were last year, but I don't know how much better. I don't think this will probably be a playoff contender next year.
It's when you have that, again, you just look back at their units and you go, even Jerry Jeudy, a guy who had a solid year last year, 74 receiving grade. That's probably your best offensive player.
Yeah, I like him more as a number 2 receiver than a number 1 receiver.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I like the pair of tight ends. I do. The quarterback situation being what it is, I do like their draft class. It's something they can build on, especially if Judkins can figure out his off-field problems. But the lack of clarity on, and not to mention, it's a stat I've mentioned in every other episode talking about the Browns. 4 of their 5 offensive linemen are going to be 30 years old this season on opening day,
and they're declining.
And
you can tell they're declining.
And the one young guy that was going to play, DeJuan Jones, is already hurt. Yeah. So it's the offensive line, it's Flacco under pressure, or it's Kenny Pickett under pressure, or Dylan Gabriel, or even Shedeur Sanders under pressure. He's not the most dynamically athletic quarterback. So it's the offense. There's a lot of issues with this offense, and it's become a long-term project.
Definitely. All right, that wraps up our preview for the Cleveland Browns. Final one we're doing right here is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike Tomlin heading into his 19th season as the Steelers head coach. He has been remarkably consistent as the Pittsburgh's head coach. They went 10-7 last year, finished in second place in the AFC North, and they lost in the wild card round of the playoffs. It always feels like the Steelers would be just above 500 to keep that streak alive for Mike Tomlin, but not good enough to compete for Super Bowls. Their defense was the 4th best in the NFL last year in terms of PFF grade. The offense, though, 21st in EPA per play, 18th in offensive grade. Now, they did bring in DK Metcalf. They brought in Aaron Rodgers, too, to help out that offense, but there's still some concerns on that side of the ball. We gave the Steelers a B+ for their NFL draft and a B- for their free agency this offseason. So a really solid, pretty good offseason for the Steelers. Dalton, the biggest strength of this team, like the Browns, though, has to be the defensive line.
I mean, you look at this pass rush. If you get behind the Steelers in the fourth quarter, you have a major problem. T.J. Watt, Cameron Hayward, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, Derek Harmon, Keanu Benton, James Harrison, Mean Joe Green, whichever. No, I'm just kidding. But, we just got – there's a million guys on this defensive – they had 5 defensive linemen last year who rushed the passer at least 200 times and had at least a 76 pass rush grade. That includes T.J. Watt, one of the best in the business. Alex Highsmith, quietly one of the best pass rushers in the business. Cam Hayward is still dominant in the interior, even into his late 30s. And now you add Derek Harmon, who led all defensive tackles in college football in pressures last year by a wide margin. Don't fall behind the Steelers in the fourth quarter. That's really it. They were first in the league in pass rush grade as a unit last year. It feels like they just get better and stack more guys on that defensive line this year. And if they're even better in coverage with the additions of Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay and then Peyton Wilson playing full-time at linebacker, if they're even better in coverage than they were last year because they weren't that great, especially on the outside last year, and you give this pass rush time to get there, because that was the only thing for me, is that when you're looking at the Steelers in the second half of last season, just get rid of the ball quickly enough. It's kind of like you were just talking about with Mason Graham and the Michigan Wolverines. Look, just get rid of the ball. Find a way to get rid of the ball. This year, you may not be able to do that with Ramsey and Slay, and if this pass rush just has that extra half second, which is a long time when you're talking about the trenches, you're looking at a team that, without question, is going to have an elite pass rush again this year.
The number 1 defensive line in the NFL according to PFF's offseason rankings, and hopefully that defensive line can break in these offensive tackles for Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh really needs these 2 young tackles on the Steelers to really shine this year, because they have a 41-year-old quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. Is obviously not very mobile. He wasn't really mobile before either, but now he's really not that mobile. Broderick Jones is going to move to left tackle this year. He's had sub-60 PFF grades on the right side of the offensive line each of his first 2 years. Troy Fautanu, the rookie tackle last year, only played in one game during his rookie season before suffering a season-ending injury. He's going to play right tackle most likely for the Steelers, where he played fewer than 100 snaps across his college and NFL career. So he's got Broderick Jones moved from right tackle to left tackle. Troy Fautanu moving from left tackle to right tackle. You're hoping that those 2 first-round picks can really improve this offensive line because they need them to.
It's badly needed. I like this team on the interior with Isaac Seumalo, Zach Frazier, especially at center. And I believe Mason McCormick's going to start at right guard, and I liked him. I liked him coming out of South Dakota State. I think he's going to be a solid NFL player. But these 2 tackles, I think, are the biggest X factor on the entire team. When you talk about Fautanu only playing one game in his rookie season last year, Broderick Jones has really struggled, sub-60 PFF grades in each of his first 2 seasons. Now you have one moving back to his natural position in Jones, and you have another who's not in Fautanu. It's always the part to me that seemed like an odd fit last year when they drafted Troy. Now Dan Moore Jr. is gone, right? And now you've got one still playing out of position and what's essentially going to be Fautanu's rookie year this year. And you have a quarterback in Aaron Rodgers who's even less mobile than Russell Wilson and obviously Justin Fields were last year. So I think these 2 offensive tackles, I think they're the biggest X factor of success. Not only and we're talking pass protection, they got to run block better as well. They want to run these outside zone schemes and do all of that. They got to be better as run blockers, too. I mean, they need to have balance because we saw it with the Jets last year with Aaron Rodgers. He had the 7th most dropbacks in the NFL. I know he's still Aaron Rodgers. He's still solid, right? But you don't want him having to take in a top 8 number of dropbacks either. And we saw with the Jets last year when they got away from the run game and everything it was just air raid and passing all the time. Rodgers isn't built to carry you like that anymore, right? And we'll just go right into him. Look, he had a 78 PFF grade last year, which obviously is still solid. It was a top 15 mark in football, but it's more conservative than ever. He's still a master of reading defenses. He will still get the ball to the right spot, but it's less efficient than ever. And he struggles, I think, to attack downfield. His 7.3 yard average depth of target, Max, was the lowest in any season he's had as a starter, right? So you're talking about a guy who I think going from Russell Wilson to Aaron Rodgers in the aggregate, to me, it's probably about equal. The difference is that Wilson did it with the high variance deep ball, right, with George Pickens all last year, whereas I think with Rodgers, what they're going to try to do is get more efficient and work to the chains more often, so there's less 3 and outs. Maybe that works for him, but also, and you look at the receiving core and you look at the top receiver that they just got in, who's very similar to the one that they let go and had a big year last year, and you go, does the quarterback and what he's trying to accomplish match with what they have as far as their weaponry? Maybe it does. Maybe he figures it out. Maybe he's better because the Jets and all of their situation last year and the last 2 years was just a mess. But Rodgers is 41 years old. He's more conservative than ever, and I think that's what the Steelers are trying to bring to their offense.
And the new top weapon for them is a guy they traded for this offseason, gave him a massive contract too. That is DK Metcalf, who they got from the Seattle Seahawks. 74.6 receiving grade last year, his lowest since 2019, which was his rookie year that year too. But he's still one of the premier deep threats in the NFL, one of only 5 receivers last year with a 99.9 deep receiving grade. One of the other 4 players was George Pickens, who the Steelers shipped off this offseason to the Dallas Cowboys. So, like you said, Dalton, at least Arthur Smith kind of knows how to utilize DK Metcalf, but it feels like DK would have been better suited maybe with a guy like Russell Wilson, who actually played with in Seattle. Now with Aaron Rodgers, it'll be interesting to see how he kind of develops his game more as an intermediate guy rather than just a deep threat.
Look, maybe Rodgers another year removed from the Achilles injury and maybe just away from the Jets. Maybe the vertical passing will come back a little bit. And you look at Metcalf, and he was one of 5 receivers in the NFL with a perfect 99.9 deep receiving grade. But one of the other 5 was George Pickens as well. So did we make anything more than a lateral move here? I think I like Metcalf better than Pickens. I do think he is better than Pickens. I don't think he is worlds better than George Pickens. Yeah. I think there's similar types of receivers, and Metcalf is maybe a little bit better route runner. But I think that's going to be a big – Metcalf's going to have to carry a very heavy load because they're unproven elsewhere at wide receiver as well. You've got Calvin Austin, you've got Roman Wilson, you've got Robert Woods. We don't really know a whole lot else about this. Now you've got a stacked group of tight ends. You got Freiermuth, you've got Jonnu Smith now, you've got Darnell Washington. They're going to have a lot of fun with the tight ends, but on the outside, Metcalf, just like Pickens last year, looks like the only legitimate threat.
So we broke down Myles Garrett already, who feels like half the fan base in the NFL feels like he's the best edge rusher in the NFL. The other half feels like TJ Watt is the best edge rusher in the NFL. So break down TJ Watt's game for us.
Well, we certainly hear enough from Steelers fans about this argument, right? But TJ Watt, look, he was right behind Garrett in PFF grade last year, right? I think less than a point behind him overall. And the biggest thing is, while Garrett last year was clearly the better pass rusher, even though Watt was still very good, TJ Watt was the only edge rusher in football with a 90 run defense grade last year, and he forced 6 fumbles as well. You're talking about a guy, look, he's TJ Watt. He's a great run defender. He's one of the 5 to 6 best pass rushers in the NFL. He makes plays on the football. He can drop back in coverage if you want him to. I mean, he can do everything, right? And he's another one. Just got paid. Just got his $40 million a year extension, and well deserved. He's one of the elite players in football. Look, there may never really be a winner in the Myles Garrett versus TJ Watt debate, especially when the heated rivalry between Cleveland and Pittsburgh persists forever. But TJ Watt's an elite football player. He still is. And I get the argument that some are making about paying him and extending him, and he's 30 years old in this snap. But again, it seems like edge rushers are aging better than ever. And when you dig in really on the impact that Watt has, and he's the best run defender in football last year, it's really, there's no argument to me.
Yeah.
You got to pay this guy, even with the rest of the defensive line as great as they are. We saw it, a couple years ago when Watt missed a handful of games, how much worse they get without him, right? He is the guy amongst a group of several really talented players.
Absolutely. TJ Watt, the only edge rusher in the NFL with 90-plus run defense grade and pass rush grade last year, too. The rookie to watch, it's actually really ironic. It's very similar to the Browns, where the rookie to watch is a D tackle, too, a first-round D tackle in Derek Carman, who also should really benefit from playing on a loaded defensive line like the Steelers have with TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Cameron Hayward. Derek Carman was one of the best D tackles in college football, like Mason Graham was last year, too. In fact, like Dalton said, he led the nation with 55 pressures last year. 84.6 PFF grade, was 10th among all D tackles. So you're playing against a veteran who's still a great player, and Cameron Hayward, one of the best D tackles in football. You're playing alongside 2 great pass rushers and 2 great edge rushers in general in TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. I think Derek Carman could really benefit from all the one-on-ones he should get as a rookie.
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's not going to be tasked with a full-time starting role, because you look in the inside, you obviously have Cam Hayward, you've got Keanu Benton, even a big body like Isaiah Loudermilk gets a good amount of snaps. So Harmon is, I think, going to be put in situations where he can succeed and he can play to his optimal strengths, right? And he can learn, especially in run defense, what he needs to do at an NFL level. But no, absolutely. I think what you're looking at now is, whenever he needs a successor, Cam Hayward, or whenever he decides to hang it up, because he's still an elite football player, they're looking for a successor for that role for Cam Hayward. And obviously that's never going to be easy, but with taking him in the first round at number 20 overall, or 21 overall, I believe it was, Harmon is tasked with that. He's going to be expected to be the guy that whenever Cam Hayward retires, that he's going to be the next in line inside.
Absolutely. All right, the best bet for the Steelers, according to Ben Lindsay, is Steelers to go over 2.5 wins in the AFC North next year at -130. You can get it on DraftKings right now. Steelers are 11-7 in the AFC North over the last 3 seasons. So basically, they've won around 3 or 4 games in the AFC North in the last 3 years. And, of course, we just broke them down. The Browns project as one of the worst teams in the NFL this year. So if you beat the Browns twice, all you got to do is beat the Ravens or Bengals once to go over 2.5. So I like that bet a lot, too, at -130 right now to go over 2.5 wins in the AFC North.
Yeah, I know Jameis Winston and the Browns pulled the big snowy Thursday night football upset against them last year, but you look at that Browns team and their offense might even be worse this year considering the quarterback situation. You get 2 wins there, you're asking for 1 out of 4. Then you're talking about, okay, either one against the Bengals with your D-line against their offensive line, right, and even their defense, right? Or you're talking about even the Ravens The Steelers, I would say, give the Ravens as much trouble as any team in football because they're so good up front, because they have a way of handling Lamar Jackson and the five-man fronts they can get in on the defensive line. So I think if you're expecting the Steelers to beat the Browns twice, which you should expect that, then you really like going over 2.5 in the division, because it would be pretty hard for me to believe that they're going 0-4 in those other four, especially against the Bengals, who you look at the Steelers next to the Bengals on paper and you go, well, the Steelers have a better football team, pretty clearly. But, again, Burrow, Chase, and Higgins, they changed the equation there.
Definitely. So the Steelers' win total is set at 8.5 right now. Dalton, if they go under 8.5, that would be the first below 500 year for the Steelers since 2003, when Bill Cowher was still the head coach of the Steelers. So Mike Tomlin has never had a sub-500 season in his career in Pittsburgh. So do you think, for a team that's gone back-to-back 10-7 years, made the wild card round each of the last 2 years too, will it be similar in 2025, or for the first time in over 2 decades, will the Steelers have a losing record?
I mean, it's just, considering the magic of Mike Tomlin, it's very hard to pick them to have a losing record. I know I went out on the limb and said they would have a losing record last year, and they still didn't. So I'm not gonna pick them to have a losing record. You just, at this point, it's been 18 years already. You just kind of can't do it. The playoffs are a bigger question, and winning a playoff game is obviously the big story in Pittsburgh. They haven't done that since 2016, right? So I think this is the problem. And this is even when you asked me earlier about, hey, are the Bengals making the playoffs? Because here's the problem. You look at the AFC, right? We're all assuming Chiefs, Ravens, Bills are in, right? Obviously, there's a South champ. That's 4. But then you're looking at 3 spots for L.A., Denver, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh. Who knows if somebody else in the South emerges? Who knows if maybe a New England Patriots emerges? Somebody's got to get left out here, right? And this is where it made the Bengals question so hard, because I think the Bengals and Steelers are the 2 teams maybe right on that borderline, just like they were last year with the Steelers getting that last spot in and then the Bengals being the first team out. This team can make the playoffs if they can protect Aaron Rodgers enough. Again, the offensive tackles, I think, are the biggest X factor for me, and then finding some receiver depth behind it. Even the running backs are a bit of a question. You've got Jalen Warren, you've got Caleb Johnson, Kenneth Gainwell, but there's not a superstar in that backfield right now for as much as we think Johnson fits in the system. So this is a good football team. Their defense could be absolutely nasty now that they've added more talent at cornerback with Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay. So I think their defense, at the very least, is going to have them having another winning season. I think the ceiling is probably one. I think the ceiling is 1 playoff win. Yeah. Unless their offensive line and those tackles really make a huge jump, and we're protecting Rodgers at a plus level, I think the ceiling is 1 playoff win. The floor is probably around that 8.5 win mark, but it's hard to pick them to have a losing season just because how much talent they have, and Mike Tomlin just doesn't have losing seasons.
Yeah, like I said, over 20 years of having a winning record in Pittsburgh. I doubt that changes in 2025 with Aaron Rodgers now at quarterback. Yes, they need help on the offensive line. Yes, the new running back in Caleb Johnson, who's get drafted in there too, and now DK Metcalf's your number 1 receiver, but I think it's going to be around the same next year. I don't think the Steelers are going to be a Super Bowl contender by any means, but I do think it's a team that could compete for one of the last wildcard spots and just probably flame out in the wildcard round again in 2025. So I have them, I'll say over 8.5, but like I said before, I think this is probably another 9-8, 10-7 type of year for Steelers.
Yeah, it feels the same. It just, there is a road where they're better than that. It's the improvement in the secondary. And and then there's a thing of still, we're talking about Aaron Rodgers, 41 going on 42. It wasn't great with the Jets last year.
No.
I mean, the numbers on the whole look pretty average, but only 6.7 yards per attempt. Really struggle to work the ball downfield. And with what the Steelers are trying to do offensively, can he work the ball downfield? The same way, Wilson was the highest graded deep passer in the league last year.
Right.
If you have any sort of drop-off from that, unless you're running the football a lot better or he is that much more efficient than Wilson closer to the chains, I think it's not being said enough that there's a lot of ambiguity on what this offense is going to look like.
Definitely. All right, that wraps up the Pittsburgh Steelers. That wraps up our AFC North preview for the 2025 season. We're doing this for every single division in the NFL, and now in the PFF NFL show, we are back to doing 2 episodes a week as we ramp up to the 2025 NFL season. Next episode will be on Thursday as we preview the NFC North heading into next year. It's a really, really interesting division next year with 4 really interesting teams next year. Obviously, you got the Chicago Bears, you got the Detroit Lions, the Packers, and the Vikings. All 4 of those teams have legitimate playoff aspirations in 2025. We're going to break down all 4 of those teams in depth on Thursday here on the PFF NFL Show. Again, you see that right there. PFF Plus, $40 off right now from now until August 7th. Only a few days left in this sale to take advantage of that right now. So do that right now with the link in the description below. Also, subscribe to PFF.com and use code EARLYBIRD to take advantage of that sale. For Dalton Wasserman, for our producers back there, I'm Max Chadwick. We'll see you guys on Thursday with our full preview of the NFC North.